Hello and welcome to this very special webcast. My name is Joel Welch, and I am SMPTE's Director of Education. We have a very special group of panelists to speak to you today. The subject is Rapid Industry Solutions Virtual Production. I'm going to turn the floor over to one of our guest speakers momentarily. There will be a brief presentation at the beginning of the webcast. We will have a Q&A period with the panelists, and then we will take questions from the audience. If you would like to ask a question of our panelists, please don't hesitate, and you can either text them, and I will read them on your behalf, or you can say, I have an oral question, and I will unmute you when you ask your question, and then I will remute you once you have asked your question. And now it is my extreme pleasure to introduce to you SMPTE's president, Mr. Hans Hoffman. Hans, if you would join us on screen, please. Welcome.
Thank you, Joel. And from my side, ladies and gentlemen, I can only say good morning for those who are at the good morning time zone. Then we have a good afternoon, and we have also a good evening. And we have even people joining around the globe to this introduction of our new initiative, what we start in the SMPTE. So as mentioned, my name is Hans Hoffman. I work for the European Broadcasting Union, and I have the honor to be the president of the SMPTE. And I must say, I'm really proud about, number one, that we were able to attract a huge amount of industry players, users, as well as editorial people, as well as technologists and companies to support this initiative and to actually create something really tangible for our industry. The topic what we have chosen here and where we found the support and where we will talk about today is just really at the window of opportunity, a big transition in the media industry. And I'm super happy that SMPTE, together with many other partners, where we will talk about later on, are working in a collaborative manner together. And of course, many of you might say, well, that's another SMPTE initiative, committee work, which starts today and 5 years later, they're still working in their committees. Actually, this is not true. We have listened to the industry very, very strongly, and we have listened and have learned that we need to become faster. We need to work transversal across the arts, across the technology, across education, several pillars of our activities. And the instrument what we have chosen enables us to be more agile and faster, delivering value to the industry at a much faster scale than with the work we've done in the past. This will be introduced today as well. It's called Rapid Industry Solutions, and it is a brand new concept what we are trying now with the onset virtual production use case. And I'm absolutely sure it will deliver value to the industry. I'm super happy to see so many people joining us today. We count over 500 registrants to this webcast, and I hope that we don't break the internet. Actually, that everybody really who wanted to be with us today has a chance to be with us. And with this, I would say I hand over now to Carrie Grubin for the next steps of the webinar. Carrie.
Thank you so much, Hans. And it's a pleasure to meet everybody. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Carrie Grubin. I'm a media and entertainment executive. And back in March, I had some conversations with Barbara and Hans on rethinking SMPTE's business model. Let me just make sure that my computer is actually going to forward. So they wanted to start to investigate, and this was also direction from the executive committee, where the need was in the industry currently. So we started an investigation on onset virtual production, and I conducted over 30 interviews with many of the people who I see on the webinar today and some of our guests about all aspects of the pipeline. And there was a lot of positive feedback about SMPTE reaching out to understand this area and to participate in emerging technologies and look at kind of current and relevant technical areas and areas that were outside of SMPTE's traditional wheelhouse. Also in that process, I got a lot of feedback, constructive and really informative, about areas for development for SMPTE around the financial model, charging for standards and output versus giving things away for free, including people not only by race and gender, but by location around the globe and from different industries, including gaming and visual effects. The education model needed to be looked at and be more on-hands and relevant. And then speed and relevance was really critical, so that as these new technology developments iterate so quickly, that you get information out to users as quickly as possible. And all that tied into what would SMPTE's new role be to bring maximum value to media and entertainment in the industry and to the organizations that it services. So I talked to all of the companies that you see listed here. As you can see, it's a really broad spectrum from different perspectives on this topic. They included educational institutions, broadcasters domestically and internationally, and a lot of companies that are working very closely within the on-set virtual production space to actually move this technology forward. As you know, it's kind of the Wild West out there, and if you look at virtual production, everybody's driving or using a different type of transportation. It could be as simple as a bicycle or as advanced as a space shuttle. And SMPTE's role is not to design these vehicles, but to really provide the recommendations and the rules of the road to accommodate whatever vehicles the creative community chooses to leverage. And through that, we found some opportunities based on the feedback we got from the respondents. There needed to be more robust and a change in education and training, had to be on the crew level and collaborate with all of the groups that are already putting out within their individual work streams and individual business silos really robust training, but it's hard to find unless you're looking for it or find multiple types of information on the same topic together. On the business side, we had to help businesses understand the cost-benefit analysis of using these technologies. We had to help technicians be able to translate to the business side on why they wanted to use that, and creatives to translate using terminology with the new crews that were coming in. And then really importantly, there are some amazing students coming up through the education system. We work with a lot of them through the SMPTE student chapters, but they are going to companies like internet companies or gaming or other areas. So we needed to find a way to expose them to all of the employment and career opportunities in media and entertainment. And by doing so, we create a pipeline of our future workforce to come into the space. Secondly, interoperability is a real challenge in on-set virtual production. Any of you that are working in it now, you know that the file formats don't translate across all platforms. There's over 300 file formats and game engines combined, and more than half of those are proprietary. So they don't necessarily move very easily between system to system. And we need to start to work towards potentially finding a way to have some formats that would actually allow for some development to make the work a little bit easier to navigate. And tied to that, you have to be able to curate all of those file formats and get information out on naming conventions and media asset management and digital asset management. There are so many groups, including Academy Software Foundation, Movie Labs, the ETC, International, the EBU, that are working on all of this work. But again, it's spread across the globe, and there is a need to bring it together so it's easier to find. And then SMPTE, on that interoperability side, there are some things that are right in SMPTE's wheelhouse that they are known for. Let's talk about LED walls as an example. SMPTE professionals have the skill sets for calibration, color science, measurement tools, working with manufacturers on improvements for things like pixel pitch. And then it's just about connecting into the system. For those of you that work in production and in post, you know, someone always wants to plug something in to a system that's never been plugged in before. So how do we do that? Things like HDMI and SDI may not be the solution in this time frame and with these types of new technology developments. Could we expand ST2110? It goes to a certain point, but maybe we need to go further. Again, all of these are opportunities where SMPTE can really provide some guidance and support, and in the process, reimagine the standards philosophy. Standards will always be needed and are very, very, very important, but not everything needs a standard. So how do we exercise what the industry needs to bring those types of solutions quickly to an industry really in dire need of that type of support? So what SMPTE had to decide, how were we going to leverage the research study? One option would have been to plug it into SMPTE's existing business and standards model, or we could use the on-set virtual production ecosystem to address SMPTE's ability to quickly and rapidly provide solutions for industry needs. So we developed Rapid Industry Solutions. It's pretty, it's exactly what it says it is. And the goal is to provide a neutral, non-commercial platform to facilitate these solutions and to enlist an advisory group that can guide the work. And the importance of that is that it makes SMPTE accountable to what the industry needs. And that industry advisory group needs to include everybody from the industry, not just kind of the current participants. It needs to include thought leaders from the on-set virtual production environment. SMPTE has a lot of experience and strength in curating and delivering information. So SMPTE can curate all the information that's developed through the process with the advisory board and the partnership with the other industry organizations and professional groups, and look at where pieces are missing in the educational offering, as an example. And then we're going to take this opportunity to understand and explore some flexible financial models so that we can start to provide this information to the industry at no charge, because that allows for wider adoption. But what that does mean is that we have to evolve the financing model. It's just like what you do in on-set virtual production. You have to do a lot of previs and planning, so it's more money up front. That's the same thing here. If you're not going to charge for standards or for the output, you have to figure out how to finance it on the front end. So it's just kind of moving the financial model around. So we have some initial goals, and these goals, again, are going to be guided by the advisory group. Number one, train and educate the industry. Let's take all that robust training that exists through things like Epic and Unreal. Take what we have through other partners like NVIDIA and all of the teachings we're learning from the ETC ripple effect research, from the Academy Software Foundation, and from Movie Labs. Bring it all together in a curated fashion so that you don't have to search it out. It's easy to find. And then review what that educational offering is and figure out the parts that are missing. Start to stitch it together so that you start to tell a story so that it enables users in the space to actually get the most out of that education. And that's on a general education level, a professional development level, and then the technical training that SMPTE is very well known for. And then let's look at where tech work needs to happen. The technology review model needs to be different. We need to partner with groups that are already doing this work, not repeat their work, but look at what they are already doing and then bring that information together, take what needs to be evaluated or discussed, and then make that available and open to the industry. And then we said, well, we could even take that one step further and develop an interoperability guideline database and make that a repository where all this information lives, that's easy to get to, that includes use case examples, workflows, a database of all the tools being developed, where you can find out the naming conventions, so it's very easy to find. And it becomes your virtual guide to virtual production. So users can have this interactive space, and the suppliers of the information can easily upload and update information. It does mean that there's care and feeding that needs to happen with the information, and all that has to be explored. And the financial model of how we would make this database available will be something the advisory group will look at. And it could be something that comes as a subscription, it could be something that's a member benefit, or again, if the advisory group feels it needs to be available for free, we'll understand and look at what the budget would mean to make it available for free, and then create a pathway to be able to fund that to then get to what the advisory group recommends. So we got a lot of questions like, why is SMPTE doing this? Well, as I mentioned, SMPTE is very dedicated to understanding what their new business model needs to be. It needs to evolve just as our ecosystem evolves. And because SMPTE is already well positioned to provide a neutral, non-commercial platform, and people know that they can trust the information that they find within SMPTE, it just made a lot of sense that this was a very safe place and a good place for SMPTE to focus. It's very strong in their wheelhouse. And then we need to look at and prioritize and identify what needs to be addressed when. And who will do the work? Well, this is not the standard everyone meets every quarter. This is going to be a group that's going to have to get in, roll up their sleeves, and get their hands dirty. The advisory group will lead and partner with industry organizations, and the budget that we're raising for this initiative covers things like dedicated project management. Volunteers are wonderful, and this will not succeed without volunteers, but volunteers by their nature have a day job. So having people dedicated to support this, to keep the process moving so thought leaders can provide their thought leadership and someone else can implement, is critical to being able to tackle this in a rapid fashion. Oops. All right, so the operational plan. This balance of 2021, we have a lot to do. We need to find the project manager. We need to establish the advisory group, some of which are going to meet today. We're already working on an operational structure and a governance model. We need to start to work with those partners who have the education to get them onboarded, start cross-promoting information and events that are happening. And then we want to start to make this really visible at every industry event and through newsletters and other things so people know what we're working on. So you'll see us at the Future of Cinema Conference. You'll see information at the annual tech conference in November. You may see us at IBC. So wherever it makes sense for us to push out information as much as possible, we will. And so the advisory group's going to start to understand what needs to be tackled so that in full year 2022, we can start to work on, if it's interoperable file formats, we start that work and we push out those recommendations by the end of 2022 or sooner. And then look at all the educational information that is there and then see where we need to develop things. Work with people like Joel within the SMPTE organization and with the volunteers and the leaders of RIS to create that information and make it available. And then 2023, continue that technical and educational work and really start to develop the interoperability guideline database. But again, ultimately, the advisory group drives this and the SMPTE team, and the work then supports these initiatives. So all the goals, as I said, are subject to advisory group input. So we hope you'll join us, and we hope that you will come participate and bring your thought leadership to the RIS Onset Virtual Production Initiative. We need a cross-section of companies, large and small. So lots of startups in the space, a lot of nimble, agile groups, and a lot of really big companies doing this. We need nonprofits and special interest associations. And really critical here is we want to enlist the global academic community. There's so much innovation and talent that they really bring a robust perspective to this process, can really be of help, and then it starts to enroll all of those students into the overall media and entertainment community. And it's going to be critical to get that thought leadership, and this is truly a neutral, non-commercial platform. Any money that's being raised for the Onset Virtual Production Initiative through RIS goes to the initiatives. It's all cost neutral, and that's really a critical point as we develop this. And within a year, we want to start publishing results so that it's available freely to the industry and the industry can benefit. So to do the funding for this, we had to rethink, how we were going to do that. So we're looking for companies to pledge 10 to 25,000 or more, and as part of that, the corporate participants will receive a seat at the table to shape the future of this virtual production environment. And we're going to develop a craft solutions ecosystem. And as you can see through today's presentation, and this will continue, we are highlighting everyone involved as thought leaders, and the fact that they are actively making change and giving them the recognition that they deserve as taking that leadership position. But not everybody is a big company or even a small company. There are a lot of nonprofits and associations in the academic institutions. This is democratic, and if a group comes in that is a nonprofit, we're not expecting that they're going to join and have to provide funding, but we are expecting that they're going to bring their expertise and their support and their students as part of that. That's their deposit. The deposit is just coming in a different form. So just to leave you with a few final thoughts. The research was very clear that there were areas where SMPTE's expertise would bring benefit in onset virtual production, which is why the executive committee said that this was the first vertical they wanted to explore. And the time to do this is now, because the ecosystem is very much in technical and creative flux. It's early enough that we can watch for new developments, but then also take areas that are approaching maturity and start to put those, if it's a standard or use case or best practice around it, so that it can be more readily used. And we've developed this in a way that's non-disruptive to the SMPTE business model. It runs on the side, so that it gives a space where we can really exercise SMPTE's current business model, analyze the opportunity, and shape SMPTE's future. So what works, we can apply to the SMPTE actual business. What doesn't work, we will evolve and change, and then see as more areas develop that seem positive, that we can bring them in. And ultimately, SMPTE heard what the community told us through the research, that there was a need to evolve to serve the needs. And SMPTE is using rapid industry solutions to demonstrate its commitment to evolve and meet the needs of the global media and entertainment industry. So with that, to talk about rapid industry solutions, we have a global group of participants. So if you would all put your cameras on. I'm also going to invite Barbara Lang, Executive Director of SMPTE, to join as well. So this is our advisory group. These are our early thought leaders, and we are so pleased to have you all here with us. So I'm going to allow you to introduce yourself so we can ask some questions and share some information. So Rad, would you like to start?
Thank you, Carrie. Hello, everyone. My name is Rad El-Takriti. I'm the Chief Product Officer at Disguise. I've been with Disguise for about 2 years now, and we've been involved in virtual production for about that time. We're very excited to be part of this initiative and looking forward to working with everyone.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Wyatt Bartell. I'm the Executive Vice President of Production at Lux Machina, so I oversee all of our efforts from film, studio, television, permanent installation, education, you name it. And we are also very excited to be a part of this panel.
Des, I think you're next.
Thank you, Carrie. My name is Des Carey. I am the Head of Cinematic Innovation for Samsung Research America. We have been involved in the virtual production arena for about 2 years now and look forward to rolling out our latest products. It's a pleasure to be invited, and I look forward to continued collaboration.
Hey everyone, my name is Chris Switek. I'm the co-founder and chief of product at ICVR. And we're a full cycle production studio that specializes in interactive content and emerging tech like virtual production, and specifically with game engines like Unreal. So I'm very excited to be a part of this and share ideas and continue learning as well from my fellow advisors here.
Hi, everybody. I'm Pat Griffiths. I'm Vice President of Technology Strategy in the Office of the CTO at Dolby Labs, and also a past SMPTE president, among other things. So Dolby obviously has a lot of technology in both imaging and audio, which we see evolving to meet the needs of the industry going forward as we look at new ways to do storytelling. So we're excited to be part of this group and look forward to making the future together.
Hi, hello everybody. I'm Chaitanya. I'm the Vice President and Head of Emerging Media for Whistling Woods International. We're a film and creative arts school based out of Mumbai. We've been doing a significant amount of work in bringing emerging technologies into the mainstream education as well as the mainstream industry. And we continue to we hope to continue to do that as part of the RIS OSVP along with SMPTE.
Hi everyone, I'm David Long. I am a professor at Rochester Institute of Technology in Film and Animation. I am also the director of Magic Spell Studios and the Magic Center at RIT. That is a research center that aggregates games research, film research, media, immersive research, and so natural mix for virtual production efforts. We're also partnered with several of the groups that are also part of RIS to help stand up curriculum and virtual production for higher ed.
Hi everyone, I'm Richard Welsh. I am a governor on the board of SMPTE. I also chair SMPTE's Media in the Cloud initiative. For my day job, I'm SVP of Innovation at Deluxe. I first got involved with SMPTE over 10 years ago due to a clerical error, and I've been here ever since. My role is to just get involved in anything that's disruptive. And if it's not, I try and disrupt anyway. So that's I think why I'm on this group.
That is why we invited you, Richard, keeping us honest. And I will call out that I have to say that Rich, Chaitanya, and Hans, thank you for taking time away from the game. We're very appreciative to have you here. So why don't we get started? So the first question is, where do you see onset virtual production going in the next 1 to 3 years? So Rad, why don't you start off? What are your thoughts on that?
Okay, I presume, like everyone else here, we see significant growth in this space, right? Given all the benefits that virtual production has to offer. But just sort of specifically a couple of trends that we're seeing today, and we see them continuing into the future. So content is getting bigger and more demanding. We're seeing that quite regularly. The expectation nowadays is to just keep pushing the envelope with either higher fidelity or more realistic, photorealistic content. And so today we're seeing people achieve this by scaling out systems, and they're doing that primarily through cluster rendering and so on. And even now we see people growing their clusters to just keep adding rendering horsepower to get this higher fidelity, more photorealistic content. And we see that trend just continuing into the future. And tying into that, content is key here, right? So content creation workflows. So we see the ability to collaborate, to create content as becoming increasingly more important. And obviously with remote work last year with the pandemic, that's obviously taken on a much more important focus. So this kind of also leads into the need for interoperability between content creation tools, right? So people want to create their content ideally once and have it flow through the production pipeline and minimize the seams between the tools. So you alluded to that earlier, Carrie, in your slides. So we see that again as a trend that's taking hold now and will grow into the future.
Thank you. Des, we had a lot of conversations about plugging into systems, but what do you see for the next 1 to 3 years?
Well, certainly COVID has been brutal for everybody, but On a positive side, it's given us a lot of time to think. It's been a very innovative time. I mean, it's happening right now, and certainly within the next 3 years, is from Samsung's standpoint, we are kind of reverse engineering what we are doing. We're taking everything we know from post-production and from theatrical exhibition, home displays, and bringing it into virtual production. So we'd like to eventually, and I think everybody would agree with this, we'd like to see consistency across the board: production, post-production, theatrical exhibition, home display, 100% consistency, taking what we know in color, contrast, so on, so forth, and really making it consistent, achieving something that hasn't really been done before. And I think we're all going to be, we're getting there. Certainly pixel pitch, we see that getting considerably smaller, and we see resolution getting considerably higher. So that is happening right now, and certainly within the next 3 years. And we look very forward to collaborating with all the distinguished people on this panel. I think it's going to be a great exercise for everybody.
Thank you. Chris, what about you? You're trying to help customers solve this.
Yeah. As you and Rad mentioned earlier, I think we're really going to see the formation of a more standardized content pipeline between real-time engines and stages, and especially taking those assets all the way through to post VFX, and doing that in a way without loss of visual fidelity or metadata. For this to work at a large scale, I think is going to be really important. And I also think we're going to see the evolution of more tools and pre-made assets that become easier to use, more powerful, and just more available to more people. And that's going to make it easier for operators to actually operate this content on stage, which itself can be a real technical challenge right now, and also for artists to create content. And companies like Epic with Unreal 5 are going to be releasing a lot of tools for that. And Rad, you guys at Disguise specifically, like your XR tools, I think show the potential of where this will go in the future with blending real and virtual environments seamlessly. And most importantly, I think that LED wall virtual production especially will kind of start to find its ideal use cases as there's much more educational penetration. Like for example, if you create content from the ground up with a goal of shooting on LED and playing to its strengths, that can lead to incredibly efficient productions, but it requires like understanding of the tech starting at the script writing stage, which we're not quite there yet.
Agreed. Yep.
Yeah, and Wyatt, when we talked to you yesterday, you were on set. So what do you think?
Yes. Well, I'm now in a hotel room. I'm in Atlanta working on film as we speak. So, I see an already disruptive industry continuing to be that, and then similarly being disrupted itself, right? We're still out here defining how we are using this technology and listening to the creatives' desires and trying to react appropriately. So I see a lot of tools that are still, coming down the pipeline simply because there are new requests from, the filmmakers that we're all here to service, for the most part, at least. I think education efforts are going to be a really big benefit for all of us. I see the universities around the country gearing up to point their students towards the new endeavors here, and we're really excited about that at Lux Machina, because I think education and finding the talented people to put on these film sets is definitely one of our biggest struggles. And then I'm hopeful that the facilities side of studios, whether they're just a lot or they're a traditional major motion picture studio, that the infrastructure within them becomes more solidified to allow the creatives to onboard into these technologies more quickly, and that the corporate behemoths that these companies can become are streamlined to allow for this new technology to pervade into them.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. So actually, you touched a bit on education. But we'll come back to that in a minute. But Richard, what about you? What do you think about in the next 1 to 3 years, especially with your AI background and things?
Yeah, I mean, well, I think AI will play a part in this in terms of how it augments, the processes and actually, improves the workflows. and the experience, obviously, in the end, the visual experience and how this blends together into a, you know, a sort of more traditional production pipeline. I think the point with you know, virtual production is there's bound to be a higher prevalence of it, and I think there are a number of really big imperatives for that. One is, you know, you're taking the location to the crew instead of flying the crew to the location. And honestly, with the lack of travel over the pandemic, and now a really big focus of all of the studios and production companies on reducing carbon footprint, I think it's going to be quite hard to, you know, justify flying huge crews all over the world when you can set up, you know, any location almost on a virtual set. And I realize it doesn't solve all of those problems, but it certainly will be a factor. And I think from that end of things, you'll also get a higher speed of production, honestly, because you're not having to move around the world to do those things. So, like I said, I don't think that will solve all of those challenges, but it will certainly give us much faster speed of content delivery. And I know that that's certainly in my day job. I see this all the time. The studios want to deliver faster, and this is definitely a path for that. But it even goes right back to delimiting screenwriting and giving, you know, indie filmmakers the opportunity to open up the boundaries of what they're doing in terms of, you know, the environments that they can film in, the locations. Again, you know, they don't have to go, you know, to these places to make their movies. So I think this is going to open up at both ends of the market. For the big studios, it will mean higher speed of production, lower carbon footprint will be big imperative drivers. And I think for indie filmmakers, you'll see that this opens up creative possibilities for them. That just means that we'll get such a wide range of new content that really explores new boundaries in what we experience as an audience.
Thanks, Rich. Barbara, do you want to do the next one?
Yeah, thank you, Carrie, and thanks to all of you for participating from my side as well. And so this RIS is a new initiative, and as we described, we're exploring whether this is something that will really help us to have rapid solutions for the industry. And so you all are participating, and I'm sure you have an opinion about it. So David, as an academic, and Chaitanya as well as an academic participant, what are you interested about this model, in particular the on-set virtual production, but also the concept of an RIS, and what you think the goals would be for you? David, and then Chaitanya.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Barbara. The cool thing here is that SMPTE's RIS initiative here is extremely consistent with what we do in higher ed. Our goal is to educate the next generation, as well as to contribute at some level technology research, or if you will, filmmaking research that's going to benefit the industry. So RIT is a pretty unique place to be able to support this. We, like many universities, have started to converge our film programs and our games programs because of the overlapping technology and creative pipelines. But we also have one of the only, if not the only, embedded engineering program in film in the country. And that permits us to set up curriculum to try to train that next generation of technicians who are going to go off and work at both studios and at the firms, the manufacturers, and the vendors who are creating those next tool sets. So for us, the participation, the goals are threefold. We want to be able to expose our film students while they are students to the technology. I think we can't underemphasize the training that goes into the next generation of creatives. How are they going to utilize these tools? It's not just the technology side, but it's also the creatives taking advantage. I think the panelists are referring to this idea of, building production, building stories for virtual production is going to make it even stronger going forward. So we want to be part of that. And then the second goal, as I said, we have this embedded engineering program we call Motion Picture Science. And the graduates of this program really want to go out there and contribute to engineering and technology evolution, which feeds back in a virtuous cycle to our third goal, which is to identify research topics that are of interest that really universities can do in a way perhaps distinct from industry or in partnership with industry. I think a lot of people who do research understand the distinction between those two, and you're stronger when you can attempt to navigate tough problems on both ends. So those are our goals to participate, and we think it's a great program.
Right, and Chaitanya, we had the pleasure of visiting your institution last year before the pandemic hit, and saw the wonderful convergence that you have there in terms of the creative and the technology. So tell us why you think this is a worthwhile effort.
Yeah, so thanks, Barbara. Thanks, Carrie. Thanks, everybody. So, just like David said, one of the main goals of the school is to answer the question, what next? And to more importantly, to enable our graduates to answer the question, what next for the industry? And the one way we've been doing it is by working together with several technology giants in the media and entertainment industry, starting from Sony, Apple, NVIDIA, Adobe, so on and so forth, in working with their future workflows, with their future technology, with their emerging technologies, and introducing that into the curriculum at the early stage. Also, working with the tech companies on the application side, because at the end of it, whichever great camera you have, whichever great software workflow you have to apply it towards content creation, which is what we as a school really do well. And that's what we'd like to continue to do here as well. So we want to take our students and make them ready for 3 years out. And the way to do it is for us as a school to set up the lab that, just like we've set up the Sony Media Tech Center and the VR lab in the past, the emerging media lab, which I run, that will start to now plug into the RIS and work with all the giants that will join in, including members of this panel, to figure out what it is that film students and visual effects students and animation students and gaming students and fashion students and music students need to learn in order to become part of the on-set virtual production world. So that's what we're looking at as a school.
Yeah, it really is quite exciting that this topic really covers the breadth of creative and technical needs. So looking at our corporate supporters in Rad and Wyatt and Chris, tell us a little bit. Some of you are somewhat new to SMPTE, and this is a new venture for you. Maybe I'll start with you, Chris. What are you expecting, from the SMPTE RIS as a concept, I suppose, and what you think of it as a future model?
Yeah, thank you, Barbara. At least from our side, we're really excited by the commitment to this as an Agile initiative. So the R in RIS for rapid is kind of the big point. And at least from our side, we see a real need to solve a lot of these problems that I kind of touched on a little bit and what I said last time, and do it in a way that's done as quickly as possible and also transparent as well, because there is, in many ways, kind of a lack of transparency in this industry. So yeah, we want to work to help achieve some of these things mentioned, such as more widespread education, like penetration of that education specifically, standardized content and data pipelines, more widespread availability of tools and pre-made assets, and defining best use cases. And from us, our core focus as a company is on the real-time engineering side as well. So anything that has overlap there is especially interesting to us.
Great. Wyatt and then Rad, I'd like to ask you the same question with respect to the RIS and the Rapid Industry Solutions concept, and what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, I think Lux Machina's involvement with this committee here is designed to, try to surface our boots on the ground experience. We have, we're fortunate to have teams around the world on some of the largest film productions going on. And so we want to surface those real world and immediate needs to the committee and then see that rapid response so that, if we're doing season 1 of a show, hopefully season 2, season 3, we can start solving those problems as a community and see our efforts come to fruition very quickly so that we can start solving those problems. And certainly there's a a body of a list that we keep growing with of needs and standards that we've hoped to push forwards, you know, from SMPTE standards of old as we move forward. So we're looking forward to you know, reopening those endeavors as well.
That's great, thank you. And you know, with 100 years, this October, SMPTE will be celebrating 100 years since its first standard. So that's very exciting. So it's kind of interesting to have this moment in time. And Rad, you, I think, were our first signer-upper to the project, which is really fantastic. So tell us what your thoughts are on RIS.
So, I mean, SMPTE is kind of new to Disguise, but I've been at Grass Valley for about 20 years prior to joining Disguise through various incarnations of Grass Valley. And so I've seen firsthand how SMPTE has actually driven standards that moved the whole industry forward. And so we were keen to then collaborate with the industry on standards to just help grow this entire space. So that was the key driver here, sort of a rising tide floats all boats, so to speak. And the other thing that, you know, it's been touched on a few times here already, but we're really interested in the training aspect of the RIS. So at Disguise, we've been involved with almost 300 LED stages over the past 15 months. And a key takeaway in all this has been the need for upskilling. So we spent a fair bit of time and energy on, you know, creating training material on our e-learning platform. And so we believe that getting people trained up is critical to greater adoption. So all the tech is great, but we need to have the trained creatives and operators to really make this shine and take off. So those are the two main takeaways for us.
Yeah, sorry about that. And I think that's a very important thing. As we learned, Carrie and I going through this initial phase, was a lot of people immediately thought about standards, which of course is very important, and interoperability is very important. But we quickly learned that training and education is equal or even more important, because there's just so much, it grew so quickly that there's a lot of information that could be clarified. So we're happy to be a platform to help do that. So Carrie, I'm going to pitch it back to you for question 3.
Great, thank you. And I want to say too, I mean, as you can see, all of you come from very, very, you're all suffering and fighting through a lot of the same challenges, but each of you has this really wonderful perspective that provides just a different point of view, just a pivot to the left and the right. And that's what's really, I think, going to be really wonderful with Rapid Industry Solutions. And there are several people who couldn't be on the call today, including international and domestic broadcasters. I mean, we had someone from public broadcasting in Belgium from VRT talk about he's doing visual radio on volume stages. So people are leveraging this technology in ways that we haven't even imagined. So, you know, all these perspectives, please know too that there's even more input and guidance we're going to get from big to small, broadcast to traditional episodic or feature, and then who knows what else. So we're excited to get that feedback. So lastly, I mean, as part of this initiative and on-set virtual production, we wanted to kind of get people's feedback on what you think are the top 3 opportunities in this space to tackle. Richard, I'd love to just get your opinion first, what you think.
Yeah, I mean, I think the environment, first of all, the way in which the engines plug into the, you know, the displays and the cameras and the lights all work together, even how we record sound on set, you know, there's loads of challenges there in that interoperability between those systems, and you know how that expands. And I think actually as this becomes more prevalent, people will experiment with all sorts of different levels of technology there. So I think the ability to plug those things together is going to be huge. I think AI and its role in augmenting all of those processes, and especially in the, you know, the creation of the objects and the environments, again, I think that's going to play a huge role in quickly being able to have real like depth and sort of you know, like the quality of what we produce in those virtual stages that we put the actors in front of. And then finally, data flow, and I think that it's kind of, it can be a bit dull and it can be forgotten, but I think the data flow through the whole process and maintaining that and enriching that data flow that both comes from upstream before we start the actual virtual production and goes downstream into post-production distribution, and can actually really augment those processes as well. So I'll be really interested to see what comes from this group, but I think those 3 areas are certainly ones that I'm interested in. I think some of them are really big challenges, but other ones I think we need to make sure we don't forget about some of those other elements as we go through this.
Yeah, thank you. David, from your point of view, what do you think are the top 3 opportunities? Or some people would call them challenges, but I look at them as opportunities.
Mm-hmm. Sure, absolutely. So, you know, you talk to an academic and ask that question, and our mind immediately goes to, you know, research questions that we could answer. But I did spend 10 years as a researcher for Kodak, so I obviously understand a bit of the industrial motivation as well. You know, for us here, the things that we think are fun, it starts, number one, with more and more case studies, right? I think one of the first things we need to do are kind of intentional academic case studies where we really dive into where the pain points are, things in the technology that are not performing as they should, and things that creatives are asking for that can be accommodated with new product, new innovation, or adjustment of old tools. So kind of a cool opportunity at a university like RIT to play that game and to get the students involved, not just in making virtual production because all of the pros are doing it, but putting their own stamp on it and helping to identify some of that stuff. To fill out a top 3, I can go to some specifics we've immediately identified. RIT has got strengths in color science and imaging system design. So in particular, we've been starting to look at color management issues. A lot of people we have found have made the mistake of thinking LED walls are big TVs. And in fact, if you study the scene to screen imaging science and color appearance phenomena, you realize that big TVs are a distortion of reality necessarily because of human eyeballs consuming things differently in the living room or a movie theater versus on set. So being able to do color management intentionally, and that also includes some of the spectral problems of a narrow band emitter from an LED set causing issues with cameras seeing color calibration different than the human eyeballs on set. Certainly there's some great research investigating adding 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th primaries, maybe even as my research I shared with SMPTE a few years ago hopes to see full spectral workflows. Obviously our friends in the fully artificial or CG world get to play with that a little bit at the advanced level. But in production, we still deal with trichromacy, 3 channels, right? And then associated with that, the third thing we're most interested in are reliability of those light engines. So if the LED wall is a light engine, it's not just for imagery, but it also could potentially be used as an illumination source, distinct from practical lighting and more difficult than practical lighting in many instances, but a partner to it. And so I think there's some fun radiometric challenges there. Again, kind of things that we like to think about in attacking research questions specifically.
Yeah, it does. I mean, that I think feeds right into kind of where Samsung's space is in this. And we even talked about the difference between if it's a broadcast use versus a kind of episodic or theatrical use. It's 2 different things.
It is. If I'm gonna, like, the opportunities, I kind of have to tag team on what David and Richard were saying. I mean, certainly carbon footprint is massive and very timely. And then from an education standpoint, there's accessibility there that hasn't always been available in regards to on-location shooting, is that there is a huge opportunity for education. And, you know, just to back into that a little bit more, it's going to be really interesting and efficient to see how studios, when studios fully step into this world, whether it's going to be, you know, at particular studios, scheduling, you know, that we finally have the ability to, certainly if you want to look at episodic or rom-com scenarios, we could be shooting 3 or 4 shows at the one time. You know, it's just really efficient with this world that is crying out for more content. Obviously, the writing is the key to everything, but it opens up a whole new world, and I hope people, rather than be scared of it, are just open to it, because as much as this is an advisory board, we're all still learning, and we're all going to improve by learning from each other here. You know, and that's really it. I truly believe it will be embraced, and we're entering a whole new world of content acquisition and exhibition. It's very exciting.
Yeah, agreed. Chaitanya, again, you're training a whole, just like David, bringing up the next generation, and also like testing things in ways they've never been tested before, because your students are not, they're not encumbered with being told no because they haven't been working yet. So what do you think are the top opportunities to tackle?
Yeah, thanks. So, I mean, some of them may be on the session, so you know they'll know what you're talking about. So, a couple of things. One is, you know, so virtual production would do two things. It would help you to produce what you're already producing, better, efficient, value added, and it would also allow you to imagine things that you couldn't produce today. So, you know, a couple of people mentioned democratization and, you know, support for indie filmmakers. So our big challenge is, how do we ignite that spark of imagination outside of what are the traditional production boundaries today, and the new production boundaries that virtual production brings in? How do we encourage students to start thinking virtual production enabled content, right? How do we allow them to imagine interactions between live action, you know, a live action video with a photogrammetry set? How do we encourage them to think of a volumetric video interacting with a, you know, CG character in a world that's created in a game engine? And while, you know, telling compelling stories and working on what, you know, the core that makes stories work, which is emotion. So our challenge is going to be to take this entire avalanche of emerging media that's coming in and give it to students as early as possible and get them as comfortable with it as possible, so that they're able to, you know, just make it fait accompli. It's just part of their life now. They will include it into their content creation and their creative thinking, and be able to just, you know, imagine better stories or stories in different environments. So I think that would be the main thing that we would look at doing.
Oh, well, thank you. No, that's really, really important, changing the perspective. And Pat, I want to give you the final word. What do you think? What would be the three opportunities you think in this space from Dolby's perspective?
Well, thank you, and thank you, everybody. I like a lot of the ideas that preceded me, and I support all of those. And I'll offer a couple of observations in terms of what we do as a group. I want to echo your comments, Carrie, that we're still in the early days of innovation here. And I like David's point. We might even reinvent storytelling as a result of some of this work because of the new tools and technology we provide. And I'm reminded that how fast the technology advances. People remember Gollum from The Hobbit. It had 600,000 polygons to represent that character in CGI. Alita, the eye of Alita, was 10 million polygons. So we continue to advance the technology very, very rapidly. And I think in this group, one of the watchwords that I'm looking for is that we stay open, that we don't throttle the technology, but share best practices, because I think as someone mentioned, we're going to learn from each other. And I think that's one of the things I want to see, that we get those case studies out there, learn from best practices, and how can we go from there. Mandalorian's a great example of a high-priced production that's successful, but it's also very, very expensive. And are there ways to innovate in that? So that's number one, kind of sharing best practices, knowing where we are so we can know where to go. I think it's been touched on a number of times, but I think a big role for this group is once we know those best practices, how do we get interoperability between the solutions? This market isn't going to grow until we get scale, and I think interoperability is a key part of that. As mentioned, there are a lot of these studios coming into play, virtual production, small studios to go out there. But I think getting interoperability will help us get the scale we need to really make this take off. And then finally, kind of maybe echoing my first point, I think we're in a fire, ready, aim phase here. As we learn, we iterate, we go back and improve. And maybe David's right. We need a new set of primaries for storytelling. I don't know. But we'll learn as we go. So I think the exciting part for me, and the reason we're involved as Dolby, is I think there's a great opportunity for SMPTE to be the catalyst here to help drive the industry forward, to get consensus on best practices. And Chaitanya mentioned my favorite topic right now, which is volumetric, both in image and audio, which I think ties into a lot of the things we're doing with virtual set production and can definitely augment the story in different ways. So I probably close with my statement that why we're here is I think that efficiency and flexibility that virtual production technology provides will make it possible to democratize and perhaps even reinvent storytelling in a way that's never been possible before. And that's my final word.
And that was a perfect way to wrap this up. So I thank you all for your participation. We do have some audience questions, so I'm going to bring Joel back in so that he can pose those questions to all of you.
Thank you, Carrie, and we do have questions, as you said. As a reminder to our guests, if you'd like to ask an oral question, just type in, I would like to ask an oral question, and I will unmute you. If you have a text question, just type it in, and I will read it on your behalf. The first question, I believe, is probably for Carrie and Barbara. It's from Susan. How does one join the advisory board?
Well, I guess I can answer that. We're going to put up a slide here at the end where you can send a note to both Barbara and myself, and we can go through the entire presentation, and we are thrilled to hear from that feedback that you want to come in and participate. Depending upon the size of your company or the size of your organization, that determines what we are looking for financially as support. I will bring up that this is, again, any funds that are raised are being used to support the initiative. So this isn't like if you give more money, you get more seats. That has nothing to do with it. Everybody gets a single vote. But that also doesn't mean that if your company or your group is participating on different, we'll have a lot of work streams to work on, several in education, several probably in interoperability, a lot of places for individual members within companies to participate. So please just feel free to reach out to Barbara or myself. We'll put that slide up here in a minute so you can grab our email addresses, and you can just go directly to the SMPTE website. There's actually a form that you can click and express your interest as well, if that's easier.
Thank you. The next question is from Azazali, and it's to Chaitanya. Chaitanya, how can this initiative contribute to other parts of the world, both educationally and industry levels, specifically in Asia? For example, Malaysia, since we seem to be behind the knowledge transfer of technology over here since the birth of digital filmmaking.
So, you know, it's historically the feeling and the perception has always been that industry is ahead of academia when it comes to rollout of technology. And in the last 10, 12 years now in Whistling Woods and in the Indian industry, we've tried to reverse that. We've tried to be the sharp end of the stick when it comes to shepherding emerging technologies into the education and then into the industry. And I think that's the way to go. Film and media schools of the region need to get involved. They need to, be proactive, reach out to, this panel, for example. Like I would, for example, if I wasn't here, I would definitely be writing to Lux Machina to try and see how we can do some case studies on campus. And that's how it starts, right? That's how you get in touch with them and things start to grow and things start to grow and things start to grow, and lo and behold, suddenly you realize you're on par with everybody. So it's not, it may seem like you're really kind of far behind, but it's actually not. It just takes a little bit of concerted effort to bridge that gap. Now, specifically when it comes to this particular on-site virtual production RIS, all the work that Whistling Woods will be doing would be publicly available through the RIS to other institutions and other organizations within Asia who want to be a part of it. Then, when things open up, touchwood, hopefully soon, they're free to come over to campus. Like some of you have seen, we have a big, nice, beautiful campus. I'm more than happy to have people come over and look at what work we're doing for on-site virtual production, as well as volumetric capture, as well as photogrammetry, and see how we're building workflows and applying the same at the academic level, and how that can be scaled up to the industry level. So I think it's just a factor of reaching out and being proactive, and you kind of get to it eventually.
And if I may, join SMPTE and be a part of this organization so that it's more easy to connect with people like Chaitanya and Wyatt and Rad and Chris and David and Richard and Des and everyone else. So, fantastic.
Thank you.
Any others, Joel?
We have an oral question from Brad. Brad, you have the floor.
Yes, I just wanted to make a note that what I've discovered, having worked with LEDs and video walls for some time, there's a disconnect between manufacturers and actual SMPTE standards. For example, we have standards with regards to the chroma signal, and yet the measurements that the LED wall manufacturer, LED manufacturers in whole use don't relate to those. I mean, I developed software that actually calibrates these lights and video walls to the actual camera's chroma signal, and I utilize that as my calibration tool. But it would be good to see SMPTE break the current lighting metrics and start introducing its camera and video signal standards as being the tool to measure these items, because there seems to be this whole disconnect that happens.
Thank you, Brad.
Thank you.
Any response from any of our panelists?
Well, just to say, also from my side, what we look in this particular initiative, but in general also for RIS, is the concept that it feeds into the engine of SMPTE in terms of innovation is of course coming also out of the standards committees and the work what the standards deliver, the international and global recognition what SMPTE standards have, and we feed the standards in various other organizations under the United Nations, ITU, ISO, name them. So what we see is that the initiative delivers actually concrete input to the standards community so that the work what you just have described can be undertaken and accomplished fast.
If I can add on there as well, I think there is increased interest from LED manufacturers, evidenced not only by Des here, but I've seen the list of attendees. We have friends from Planar and Unilumin, both large players in the space, and I believe as this industry continues to grow and become more pervasive across a variety of verticals, that these initiatives will have more voices within those companies directly, and that we will all see benefit.
And we have, I think, 8 more questions if everybody is willing to take them. Yes. Yes.
Wow.
The next one is from Reese. Reese says, a lot of the talk has been about on-site virtual production, and it's focused on set creative for scripted film and TV. I'm wondering what the panel thinks about how virtual production will affect live broadcasting, such as sports and news. What are some of the challenges that face a live production workflow?
Well, before someone jumps in, I will say we are talking to the broadcast community. So that's the one really wonderful reach of SMPTE tools that we're leveraging is that it's not just about episodic or feature. So between the EBU, we've talked to, again, domestic and worldwide broadcasters over time. So there is a big difference, and some of that has to do with how you set up your virtual set. A virtual set that is meant for live broadcast can't be, basically wide dynamic range and really flat that you're going to color correct later. It has to be potentially HDR right from the start. So it's a completely different setup. And so balancing those two disciplines between whether you're shooting something meant to be color corrected later or something that's live is a real challenge. And I got feedback from respondents on the broadcast side saying it'd be really great if we knew that what we calibrated in London matched what we calibrated in Los Angeles, so that we could have a real interactive way to have multiple locations match without too much work. Or if we're going to send someone out to do an on-location shot for live broadcast that was, say, at a football stadium, that you could color correct it to make it look like right from the start, make it look as if they were live there rather than trying to match it in. So those were that was some of the feedback I received, and I would love to turn it over to the panel now to see what their feedback is.
Sounds like we need some standards, Carrie.
Probably.
Well, Carrie, yeah, you bring up, this is a very relevant question. We were just on a call yesterday with the IBC Accelerator program, and this is exactly, what they are talking about and what they would like to start, bringing into play. So I think it's, I do see a huge potential for live broadcast, and when people think about virtual production, they're automatically thinking of volumes of 360 or 270 degree volumes. That doesn't always have to be the case. I mean, we certainly see huge interest in smaller micro volumes, that can be used, that can be not static, but can be remote. So once again, this is all going to become part of our discussions and ultimately a white paper in where we see things going. So I think that was a great question, because there was a very big conversation about it yesterday.
Yeah,
I want
to interject.
throw in. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, thanks. So yeah, just a question on a point on the volume. So yeah, we see that in broadcast, the need to have set extension to make the space look bigger than it really is because of limitations on space in studios. But the other thing we're also seeing talk to broadcasters is this is all great, but it also must connect to existing broadcast workflows. And so in many cases, it can't just live as an island on its own. It needs to connect to the newsroom systems and control systems that the broadcasters use to drive their existing productions. So part of that, setting up the standards, how do you bridge to that and make sure that you can still control it within the standard workflow tools that exist today?
And I'll throw in here too that I think it's important the industry not, direct its definition to a narrow slice of what virtual production could be. I think there's a huge stretch of the industry who believes that XR and MR experiences, which are very popular in live broadcast and live events, those are utilizing a lot of the same workflows, a lot of the same technology. So where we might consider education and standards touching what is most compelling today, which is the on-set effects, the LED walls, there are so many crossovers to these other workflows, these other applications where virtual assets are being mapped through motion tracking and proper live compositing onto a broadcast stream. So that there's a bigger ecosystem that should be described as virtual production. I think if you go to things like real-time conferences and other venues, other industries that are ancillary to ours talking about it, you see a bigger definition than perhaps has been thought by many people in the SMPTE-verse.
Agreed.
Okay. We do have a number of questions. I'm not very confident we're going to get to all of them, but we'll do our best. The next one comes from John. How can data security be standardized and embedded and maintained across elements of virtual production?
I think I can speak to that a little bit, at least as we try to onboard multiple visual effects companies, onboard people on site, try to limit physical access to machines and encryption. You know, these pipelines use existing technologies at the moment that I don't believe were intended to be so collaborative across multiple companies. You know, version control systems are generally intended to live within one big company in an office, not get deployed to a set, whether that be a broadcast or a theater or a film. And so there's a lot of constraints that come with that. You know, the MPAA certainly has thoughts on data security and rights and how we should maintain access to machines and create key cards and digital identities for everybody as well, and making sure that we track, you know, what individuals are in the system, what do they have access to, and then have flags that get raised when things start to go out of bounds to make sure that we have managers and content review policies in place to mitigate damages, you know, if they need to be. And then certainly having disaster recovery plans to make sure that, you know, if we do have an intrusion, that, you know, we have practices in place to try to mitigate that fallout as much as possible. These are things that definitely keep me up at night.
I think it's worth saying as well on that question, it's something that's actually goes well beyond virtual production, because as we're moving workflows into the cloud and, you know, we're generally working more remotely, we've had to adapt the security environment very rapidly over the last 18 months anyway. And we're going to continue to do that. And, you know, trusted authorities are not really very well developed in our space. And, you know, generally speaking, we need to be looking at new models of security that are quite different, I think, to the traditional locked door and CCTV cameras, you know, model that we've relied on in the past, especially in production and post-production. You know, on-set security is going to change very quickly, with exactly as Wyatt just said, you know, the flow of data between many different places to get it to that virtual production. But that's happening in all parts of our industry now. So I think there's a big question here, and maybe something for the rapid industry solutions, you know, for maybe one of our next projects going forward is to look at the security question, because it's something honestly that even the experts in security are scratching their heads about. You know, there are lots of ideas, but we don't have solid frameworks for the new world that we already work in. So there's definitely a lot of work to be done there, but it's exciting work as well. And you know, we face just as many opportunities to improve things across the board here, in that area of security.
Thank you. Next question is from Kelly. Kelly asks, how will virtual production bring forward interactive storytelling?
All right, I'll take a stab at that one. Richard mentioned AI. There's a lot of interest in AI-generated characters. If we move forward and start talking about virtual experiences, some form of volumetric, and characters that exist not necessarily on a screen, but in between, the possibility or interactivity then increases. It's a big jump. I mean, now you're starting to talk about Star Trek and the holodeck, which I've always joked. In fact, we had a SMPTE conference on it many years ago, Barbara, you might remember, where I was musing about, are we moving towards holodeck? It will come, but we need a lot of innovation, a lot of improvement in processing power, but it will take time. And now, for now, you living in the gaming environment, if you put on your Oculus goggles, you can have an interactive experience today. But I assume the question might be more about bigger, more realistic virtual experiences.
Yeah, just speaking on that from the tech side, I mean, that is the advantage of running content through a game engine like Unreal. It's very different from a plate or something that's pre-recorded, in that this is all being rendered live and real time in engine. So most of these experiences that you see, you know, traditionally on LED wall are fairly passive. You have some triggers that you can put in there maybe to make things happen at certain points within the scene. But I do think there's a lot of unexplored possibility there with building out more interactive content and different types of experiences that may not just necessarily be a, you know, pre-recorded production that you're going to edit out and turn into video format when it's released. So we'll see where things go in the near future.
And in fact, one more comment, Vicky Dobbs-Beck of ILM has said, is the next generation not about storytelling, but story living, which I think speaks to this issue about, interactive storytelling.
Yep.
It's interesting
Okay.
the link up between the sort of the virtual and the physical. So take an example of, J Balvin's concert in Fortnite, which was linked into the game directly and performed on an LED stage. And there was a link up and direct feedback between the game and the stage and the game. So it just opens up these new possibilities that we hadn't explored before. And so it's just interesting to see how all this plays out over the coming months and years.
I mean, in summary, what we see here in this technology transition is that the innovation is not only limited to technology. The innovation is really in the part of how do we create future stories. And this will include certainly interactivity. How can we enrich accessibility for certain people? How can we actually totally infiltrate in a positive sense how smaller companies will be able to generate very immersive stories, which was only possible in former times for the big studios with a lot of financial background. So this is a shift in the ecosystem. And for us in the initiative, and I must iterate again with our partners in crime here, what we try to do is to make this technology available to as many editorial and creatives as possible, so that we, at the end of the day, contribute to better storytelling for the majority of the populations. And that's the game, that's the aim what we have, of course, with the initiative as well.
One friendly amendment, Hans, I prefer to be your partner in progress. I'll leave it to the others to do the crime.
And I did want to add really quickly is that, as we've been thinking about this, it was also a way to have an on-ramp and a space for bringing new technology companies and thoughts and ideas into the SMPTE organization and universe, because there's so much crossover that's happening right now. And I would love to see, I follow the work by Madison Square Gardens with the Sphere that's being built in Las Vegas, which is going to be this combination of immersive tools. If you look at companies like Meow Wolf, or even the new Van Gogh exhibit that's traveling the world right now, their content is evolving on a moment-by-moment basis.
Content innovation at the end of the day, what we see. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And so what we're going to do with this starting now could apply to the next time you work out in your virtual environment that you feel like you're actually on the road, or you're going to work on something where you're sitting with a group of people and having this shared immersive experience at a level you've never experienced before. And so this is the future of our industry. And so starting with this, it opens up all kinds of doors for more collaboration and creating tools and best practices and standards where needed, because you don't always need a standard, but where it's necessary, so that more storytellers can leverage those tools in a way to tell what they want to tell.
Mm-hmm.
Very good.
That's it.
Good.
Go ahead, John.
Oh. Okay. Well, we have, I want to say about a little less than 7 minutes, and we still have more than 7 minutes worth of questions. So we'll squeeze in as many as we can. And for the questions that are not asked live, we will provide answers when we provide the on-demand video. Just wanted to let people know. The next question comes from Jay, it is a question. Within the 3GPP, the 5G Media Access Group is looking at how mobile systems can support use cases such as on-set virtual production. Do you have any contact with that initiative?
We do not, but we will be happy to make
we
note.
do now.
I would love to hand over at the same moment to my colleague Paula Suna, who is on the call as well, who we will involve from the EBU side in the initiative. Paula has very good contacts into 3GPP. And actually, the comment is very important, and it is actually hitting an important element. We have already talked about the collaboration and the work what Carrie and Barbara has been doing in terms of talking to other organizations, I think it's just a start. And we certainly have to reach out to 3GPP and others as well. And they're not the only ones, I think, who might be relevant in the space of what we have. And then to listen to them actively, to liaise actively, and to share actively what we do, but also to gather requirements, what they might have, and so that we can address them. That's what we are looking for. And thanks for the comment.
If I can add to that, I know at Lux, we see a lot of use case coming for the cloud and for 5G, for high data speed transmissions with low latency when it comes to on-set creatives, trying to utilize these pipelines that we keep talking about, but on location, whether, you're in a field and you want to grab an iPad and do some serious work with a character, a digital character that's out there, that's still virtual production. Or whether we're talking about, installing these 5G, sites at actual studio lots and giving creatives the freedom to use a supercomputer out in the cloud and stream that back down to that same phone or screen, or utilize the machine learning technology that can be best done in a data center, but still on set with creatives. And so, as land connections get better through fiber, I'm excited to see that. I'm excited to see the SpaceLink stuff coming online as well. But I think there's a great space for 5G in this ecosystem to come.
Absolutely. I totally agree. Yeah. But I think we need to pick our win-wins as well. I think the initiative also needs to prove now over the next couple of months that we can truly deliver. And then next step, and then the next step, and then the next step. I think this is also important. Whilst I totally agree, there will be a huge convergence of possibilities on the infrastructure side, and we need to see. We really need to see.
This next question could be a real challenge to answer, and it's with regard to the academic education piece. Harry says, universities have very tight production and equipment budgets. How can they afford the equipment to teach virtual production? It's very expensive.
So I'd like to take a stab at that. So, this 16 years ago when the school started, this was our big problem. This was something that we were going to face, especially in a country like India, because, we have high duties. And what we discovered was that if we as an institute take one step, the media and entertainment technology companies take 5. Just a little bit of initiative, and we were able to have Sony come on board, set up a division of their Media Technology Center on campus and equip it and staff it. Just so that they could get the latest digital cinematography education out to the school as well as the industry. And then, next we had like a long line, right, from Apple to Red to Foxconn, NVIDIA, Adobe, Avid. I mean, the list is huge. And it's just about proactiveness, what I mentioned last time. You reach out to them, you have to convince them that what you're doing is right, and you need to, it's in their interest to invest that kind of hardware and software and training into the institute, because that's really where the next generation is going to come out from. And, we've, touch wood, we've been successful so far, and we, hope to continue to do so. And even with virtual production over the past year, I mean, the lockdown's been brutal for everybody, but we've kind of used it pretty well at the lab, because, we've had time to work and make mistakes and then shoot and then make mistakes again. And so, that's allowed us to fix our photogrammetry pipeline, fix our volumetric capture pipeline, and we've had all these tech companies from all over the world, many in beta stage, come in and chip in and spend time on calls and on mails and give solutions and give patches to help the institute. So I think it's just about reaching out and taking that first step. It seems like it's out of reach, but suddenly it just falls into place.
Yeah, I'll echo real quick too, because I think you've said it perfectly with respect to our responsibility to train that next generation. And I think that the vendors, the manufacturers, the industry is, they're hurting right now for that talent. So we are the solution to the talent problem. But on top of that, as someone who, my career has been split between industry and academia, we are able to contribute research support in different ways. So it's not just about trying to get your gear in front of the next creatives who will then use your gear loyally through their whole careers. It's also about taking advantage of talent that's on these campuses to do a lot of the investigation of tough research questions. And we've had great success on that here at RIT.
And I think just worth saying as well that, you know, you might think, oh, we've cherry picked a couple of education establishments that have been successful in doing this for this project, but actually we work with lots of other institutions, and they're doing the same thing. They're reaching out to companies, they're proposing projects and ways in which they can support the upcoming talent, their students, but also in which they can contribute something back to those manufacturers. And we are seeing that there's a lot of take up here. So it definitely, as Chaitanya said, it's about that first step, and you know, and having those programs that contribute to the manufacturers, as David said, as well as, you know, enriching the students' learning. So it's definitely possible. You know, don't feel that it's out of reach. Exactly as was said. You know, make that first step and try and make those contacts, and, you know, work with SMPTE, because that's what we're here for. And we have an entire pillar of SMPTE which is given to education, and, you know, we want to support as many education establishments as we can in nurturing the next generation of technical talent that we as an industry desperately need.
Hey, maybe people should join SMPTE, Richard.
Yeah. So I just want to add like a 20-second.
Crazy.
I just want to add a 20-second rejoinder. I want to add a 20-second rejoinder to this. Is so what we've noticed, it's important who from the institute reaches out. Technology companies like to see decision makers reach out to them rather than, you know, the lab technician, right? I mean, this is just pure personal experience speaking, and that's what we've noticed, right? So if schools are able to dedicate senior management time towards R&D, towards development, towards answering the, you know, question what next, the industry responds better.
Thank you. We've gone over a little bit, and but I think we would be remiss if I don't ask this last question from Michael, and I think it's probably for Barbara and Carrie. Michael asks, what's the next step for this group?
Oh, I'm going to kick that over to Carrie.
Well, the next step for this group is first week of August, we are actually having our first advisory group meeting. So probably sometime this afternoon after this call is done, I'm going to be sending a poll to all the participants you see here and the few that weren't able to make it to set up that time. We have drafts of some of our governance and a charter and starting to put all of that together. And that first meeting, there'll be a very rich agenda, which is going to be going over how do we divide up to different work streams? Who wants to lead those work streams? Who do we need to do additional outreach to? Here is the budget as it stands so that everybody has real visibility to understand the type of funds we have to work with at the moment, because all of it is going to be about prioritization. And then we'll come to the table with the list of all of the potential areas to get started, and then that advisory group will start to do that investigation. So that's that first meeting in the beginning week of August, and we'll start to set up the meetings right away for the individual work streams and start to prepare for reporting out to the Future of Cinema Conference on October 9th, which David is chairing, as well as talk about what we want to do for the annual tech conference. And it's going to be that start of the discussion. You know, I would be remiss if I didn't say that a lot of the companies that were on that first slide, when you saw 30+ companies, we are actively in conversations with the majority of them. So depending upon where they were kind of corporately and budget cycle and so forth, we were able to get this amazing group of contributors for the advisory group on board right away. But there are going to be many more of names that you know. So we know that there are certain companies that people brought up, well, you should be talking to X or Y. We are in conversations with those companies and hoping to get them on board. And then to start to do that conversation with each of the groups to say, what are you working on? As an example, we know that the ASC, American Society of Cinematographers, is having a virtual production training session, I believe at the end of July. Mm-hmm. That information needs to get out widely to everybody, because that's one of the things we find is that everybody doesn't realize how much education's already happening. So just by pushing in those directions to start to curate that, to get out to anybody so they know, if I go to the SMPTE website and I look under RIS for OSVP, onset virtual production, and I look at what's coming in education, that if you knew you could go there and not have to spend time looking for it, that immediately starts to bring value to the people that are in this space. So it's going to be a very active first 6 months, and then it'll probably be even more active after that. And
Carrie, speaking of education, are we going to have a copy of this recording available?
I believe so, right, Barbara?
Yes.
Yes, yes, indeed. Yes, we will.
For all attendees?
Of course. We will have the slides as well as the recording. And we will, if I may just follow that up, is as you see, please do contact us. We mentioned this earlier, either Carrie or me, and also on our website you can express your interest. Do let us know how you would like to participate. We would like this to be an industry-wide initiative and really make good progress rapidly. So your participation is critical. So we look forward to hearing from you. And thank you very much for attending today.
Yeah, and I did want to say too, even if you're from a university and say you're a university that doesn't have a student chapter, there is a big outreach going through our membership as well as our student chapter leads right now to develop those chapters. And some of the questions about how do you get the resources, we want to make sure that we're connecting all of our university program participants because they can share information. Chaitanya and I had a great conversation, and I'm going to call it out because I know Eric Weaver's on the call here, that they had never met each other. So just through the conversation casually about this, I just made a quick email introduction. And I think that especially universities, if you're looking to bring value to your students and bring some visibility to your university programs, come and join us. You could even put that information, send that to Barbara or I, and we will put you in touch with Renard Jenkins and Michael Zink, who are heading up the membership and the SMPTE student chapter initiatives.
Hey, Carrie, isn't that one of the perks of being a SMPTE member, the people?
Yes, it is, Pat. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Very good. What a great initiative, and what a great panel.
Thank you all.
Yes,
yeah, I'd like to thank everybody for participating, our panelists for joining us and hanging out with us to the end. This was I know it was a rather long webcast for you, but I think you shared some valuable information about the initiative, but also answered some questions that folks had top of mind. For those folks who do have questions in the queue that went unanswered, we will answer them with when we share the video and PDF of slides. If you want to contact Barbara and Carrie, their email addresses are on the screen. Thank you to our guests for hanging out with us for over 90 minutes today. A lot of webcasts that you could attend, but this one I think is important. So thank you to everyone. With that, take care. Safe travels as the world starts to open up, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye now.
Thank you.
This was a virtual.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.